get the stream started here momentarily in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. It's Alex on this very nice and easygoing Sunday evening. Um, First things first, if you like the content, like, share, and subscribe, and share with everyone. We're here to learn new stuff. The second thing is go check out Code Black Matrix on Facebook. You can also check out Emerging Ladies Academy online. And go check those folks out. They're doing really great work. And then lastly, if you like stuff other than what we're going to be covering today, like food, you can go check out my other YouTube channel with Squealer's Delight. Just posted a video over there a couple of days ago about making some homemade sausage. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the similarities between Java and C Sharp. They're both object-oriented programming languages. Java is much older, but you can tell that when you look at C Sharp code, that it takes a lot of inspiration from Java. The only difference is, just in my humble opinion, this is just me personally, I'm very partial to C Sharp because it's of how centralized all of the development tools are, how easy it is to pick up and learn once you know concepts of object-oriented programming. And yeah, the syntax, again, it's very similar. So if you look at Java, look at JavaScript, and you look at C Sharp, the syntaxes are almost, I wouldn't say identical, but they're very, very similar to one another. So we're going to go ahead and get ourselves started here. I'm going to switch over to my other output here. There we go. Make sure I can see everything going on here. And let me make sure I'm live streaming like I should be. Yes, wonderful. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to come on over to our code editors or IDEs, and I'm going to be using both Visual Studio, excuse me, and I'm going to also open up Visual Studio Code. I'm going to put the Visual Studio Code. In the Visual Studio Code, I'm going to put the Java, and in the Visual Studio, I'm going to put the C Sharp. And we're going to run some very similar pieces of code to one another so that we can do a little bit of comparison as well. So let's open up Visual Studio, and I'll open up Visual Studio Code. Now, the one thing about Visual Studio is it is a memory hog at times. Well, all the time. Visual Studio Code is a lot more portable. Excuse me. You can also, I just downloaded that update. That's the other thing about Visual Studio. There's these constant updates. I just updated this Visual Studio before I got on live stream, and it still shows that I have an update. I'm wondering if that's just going to go away. That notification will just go away because I've already updated it to that version of Visual Studio. So while Visual Studio is thinking about working today, I'm going to go ahead and come over to Visual Studio Code. Now, the cool thing about Visual Studio Code is it's easier to, it's very easy to add on extensions that will allow you to do a multitude of different things. Okay, so I'm what I did prior to the live stream was I went ahead and downloaded a Java virtual machine and a Java developers kit, which I believe comes with the Java runtime, so that you can debug your code. So we're going to go ahead and all of this code will be uploaded to our GitHub account, to the GitHub. So I'm going to come over here to my editor, my Explorer window. And because I have the Java extensions in here, you can see create Java project. There's also an open Java project. So when you click create Java project, what it usually does, or at least it does for me, is it gives you a different um, instance of Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to I've clicked create Java project and click no build tools in here. And it's going to ask you, where do you want to put your code at? So I'm going to go into my repository here. Let's make sure we're in the right spot. We are. I'll click in Java. And up here, it's going to say input a project name. So let's just call this one code compare. So it opens up or restarts your instance of Visual Studio Code. And on the left, you see a couple of things here that are specific to Java. So the first thing that you see is, because this is a brand new repository, you see a README in here, and it gives you all of the stuff about Visual Studio Code, Java World. It talks about where you have your source files. You have your libraries for dependencies, so those are in there. This is our source file called app.java. I'm just going to rename it real quick and say rename, and we're going to call this code. No, we'll leave it as app.java. Let's leave it alone. Okay. Now, that is Visual Studio Code. Now let me go to my Visual Studio. I knew that was going to go away. Go away. And this is the one thing about Visual Studio that drives me crazy. Like I said, it's a memory hogger. Let me hide that. Come on. All right, so I'm going to create a new project over here. New project. And then the name of our new project is going to be Code Compare. And it's going to be codecompare.cs versus codecompare.java. And obviously the Java is the extension that you'll run for Java files. So let's come up here, get rid of this test, and go to desktop application, because we're going to run actually a console application. And we're going to take this and say all platforms, so that we can create a .NET Core. Say next. I'm going to make sure I'm in the right repository, so I'm not in the right spot. So I'm going to click my down arrow here, go to this repository, and we're going to call this Code Compare. Say next, and then we're gonna pick the right framework. So I'm gonna click the .NET 5.0 framework and say create. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna create my console app in the .NET framework 5.0 framework. In the meantime, over here, I've got my code. And if you've seen any of the C# tutorials and live streams and videos that I've done, we've gone over what C# code looks like. So let me zoom in here. I'm not used to working in this particular editor. Let's see, how do I make that a bit? There we go, Control plus. Oh, not that big. There we go. So, and in the meantime, that's doing its thing. All right, so now let me close that for right now. And then let's drag that one to the right and shut that Explorer window so you can see what we got going on here. And Control minus. And here we have something very similar. Okay, so let's go over the differences here of what we're seeing here. Okay, on the left, we have our C# class and namespace declaration. On the right, we have our Java. And you can look at it and we can tell a few things. So the first thing, not including the namespace, we'll get to that in a minute. But if we see, let's start with the class here. So we see we have a class called program. Over here we have a class called app. Now this particular class in the Java has a modifier for accessibility for public. Now by default, when you create a C# class, by default, it is, if you don't specify a modifier on it, then it's going to be specified as an internal only class. So it would only be available to the different classes and methods that are inside of the namespace. Okay, but that doesn't mean that we can't do this. Oop. That we can't do that. We can always do that, right? So far, the code looks very similar here. We have a class declaration. Now let's go down to this main method. So just like in C#, just like our class, that's a default. If you don't have a accessibility modifier here, then it's going to be internal. So I can also say public, and it does the same thing basically. So we have public static void main, and it's passing in a string array called arguments. Over here in the Java, it says public static void main, and it also is passing in a string array called args. Okay, now there's the first thing, one of the first things that we see here is this main is lowercase and this main is uppercase. Okay, so that has to do with that all has to do with standards that are set between the different kinds of code bases there. Camel casing, capitalizing method names is something that is a standard in C#, not so much in Java, but it's really good practice. But your main method in Java and your main method in C# are going to be case sensitive. So you have to leave that signature as you see there. Now, the first thing that we see that is different over here in our Java, it says that it throws an exception. Over here, we don't have an exception being thrown. What we'd have to do here physically is handle our exceptions over here. Now, this is exception handling over here as well, but it's just throwing an exception. So if I take this off of here, and then I go and I debug this, let's see what happens. So we've got our terminal that launches down here. Let's see if it prints out hello world, and it does. So just like with our code there, over here on the left, we've got the ability to handle our own exceptions. Throwing an exception will stop your code from running. So you want to handle your exceptions. We can even make the code really appear the same way with all of the different curly braces. So this basically is the same thing that we've got going on right here. Okay. Only difference only difference that we have here, oh, I just messed something up there. Only difference that we have here is the actual classes that we're calling to do different things. So the system.out.println method in the system class is the same as the console.writeLine class in C Sharp. They both do the same thing. If I ran this code over here, let me just run this over here, it's going to also print off out hello world for me. Now, the one major difference, however, is over with the C Sharp code, you're going to get an actual pop-up box that's going to pop up momentarily and it'll disappear when it runs, because it's a console application. The Java application is writing to the terminal. We would have to code it to pop up a console, I believe. So, but other than that, the code is very, very similar to one another. You know, again, there's some slight differences in syntax and keywords and class names, but again, syntactically, it's basically the same code. And so this is the beauty of picking up one true programming language, is that it makes it easier to pick up others. I worked on Java code before I touched any C Sharp, and I didn't do a ton of it. But when I was exposed to C Sharp and I had to learn C Sharp, I was able to go back to my Java roots that I had and understand exactly what this code is doing. We can write the exact same code in both code bases. So let's do that right now. So let's come down here and we're going to create a variable. We're going to create an integer. And then we're just going to call it myInt equals 0. Okay. Over here, let's do the same thing. Int myInt equals 0. You can see that in both instances here, I've got these little squiggly lines here. And if I hover over this with this IntelliSense and this code lens stuff, then what happens is I can see that, yep, this value is not being used in my Java code. If I come over here to my C Sharp, I get the exact same thing. So again, this code works they're almost identical, right? They're almost identical. Now let's do something with this integer in both instances. Watch this. Now, if I do a for loop over here, there's a for each loop over here as well. But let me go to the for loop. I'll show you the for loop. For. And the syntax of the for loop is going to be the same, basically, as in C Sharp. Let me just create a for loop here. Okay, so we're going to do int x equals 0, semicolon. We're going to say x is less than 10, semicolon, and we're going to say x plus plus, semicolon. Oh, not that. Okay, so this is a for loop in Java. And then let's say we just want to add one to the integer. Right, int. And then down here, we want to output that value. Value of my int is plus my int to string. To string. Okay, now we get a little squiggly line over here. So let's see what's going on here. Cannot invoke toString on a primitive type. We'd have to convert it to a type. So let's just leave it like that. Okay, now these are some of the differences that you'll see in Java and C Sharp. What Microsoft tried to do was they tried to put a bunch of the code that you have to do physically in Java into libraries in C Sharp and in the .NET framework, so that you don't have to recreate the wheel on things, right? A great example is properties, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's copy our code here. Here's the cool thing about this. Watch this. For tab tab, it does that for me. I'll make this X. You see it changes all of them. I'll put a 10 there, and I'll say my int plus plus. Same syntax here, basically, right? Now the only difference is in this instance, I'm going to call it a console class, because in C Sharp it's called console. Console dot write line, and we'll just say value of my int is plus my int. All right, and let me put a console read here, read key, and let's actually put a little bit of interactiveness in, a little bit of interactivity in here. So let's say um, let's see, in read. Uh-oh. System dot in dot, should be a string in here. And read. I don't think that's right. Equals. You know what? Just for the sake of making this fast, because like I said, my Java's rusty. So I'm gonna put a breakpoint here, and I'm gonna put a breakpoint here. I'm gonna run this one by clicking the start debugging, and I'm gonna hit F5 on this one over here. I can't hit F5 because I don't want to start the let's go to run and start debugging. Should stop on this line right here, and it does. And just like over there, it should stop on that line there, and it does. So if we hover over our myInt, we can see over here our myInt is 10. And if I hover over here on myInt, it should be the value of 10 as well. There we go. So our code did the exact same thing in both instances. There are nuances to Java code versus C# code. For example, if I wanted to bring in a library for another Java library, let me stop debugging this one, then it's the import keyword. So I can come up here, I can say import Java dot, and I can do one of these Java libraries. So let's say I want to say Java, oh no, Java.time or Java.text. Yeah, let's do Java.time. Time dot, and I could say local date time. Okay. And I come down here, let's just make this one bigger. Come down here and I can say local date time dt equals new local date time, and actually I don't know if I can that. Equal date time dot now. Okay, and then DT is not used, and we can come down here and we can say system out print line, and I can say DT dot I don't know. Let me use something here. Get day of week, something like this. I think that's returning a number. Yep. So if I run this, let's see what we get down here. We hit F, step over, and step over, and that's what we get Sunday. So let's print out the date, okay? So we want to print the date, Sunday, plus, actually let's just make a string. String, date, string, equals. Equals that. Okay, now, let's say date, string, format. And this is very similar to what we were doing before. So we have a format in here, 0. So Sunday, 1, 2, something like that. And this args is it's a array. Let's see if we can change that format up though. Let's see. Format. And let's scroll down here and see. There's a format string. I said string. Let's look at let's go to Google and let's Google to make sure that we're doing this part of it the right way. Okay, so let's Google Java string format. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so these are format specifiers in here. So we want to say date is, and we want to have an S for the string. So that's going to be Sunday, comma, and we're going to need the date. We got the day of the week. And again, this is a string, array, so we can pass all our arguments in here if we need to. And so we can do it that way, or we can do like he's doing here, or we can do like he's doing here. So let's go back. Array. So here we go. And that might be a better way to do it, but we're going to do it the other way. Can I pass an array? Yeah, so let's do this. Let's make a string. String in color args arguments equals new string, and we're going to make that, and we're going to replace this one with arguments. Okay. Okay. That was streamline format. And then what we want to do is we want to do this. Copy that, paste that, put that in there. Copy the day of week. I'm going to say var day. That. And we're going to put Sunday, which is day, to string. Not sure that's liking that there. Let's say this, string, out string equals that. And then here we'll just put out string. Something tells me that's not right there, so let's just keep building it here. So we've got our day. We've got our, actually we can just do this. DT get day of week to string, that's the day. And then Sunday, and it's going to be DT dot get month. I'm not sure if that passes that, if it passes a numeric value there or not. Yeah, I think that just passes a numeric value there. Yeah. Maybe we should see get month value. Get month value. Actually, get month might work. So we have the day, month, then we're going to do the day of the week. The day, dt dot get day of the month, comma, to okay. Let's do it this way. Month, say day. Why is it not like that? Day of month, and this is day. If I can do that. Nope, can't do that. I have to convert it to a string to put it into here. So I have to get the value. Day month dot dt get day of month. And I need to store that into a, I need to convert that from an int to a string. So let's see how to do that, because this doesn't have a string. So let's just Google how to convert to a string. So there we go. How to convert an integer to a string. So what we can do is, we tried this, but that particular method doesn't have a toString on there. So what we can do is pass value of, and that's kind of like a converter, it appears to be. So we can say string.value of this. That should give me back a string. So now I can say day. There we go. So we have Sunday, the month, the day. We need the year. DT get year. And it looks like we need to do the same thing here. So let's do this. String value of, do the same thing we did there. We can actually just, instead of making this day, let's take this, just copy it down here like that. Get rid of this day. We don't want to have to create a new variable that we don't need. Okay. All right, so we have so we've got this arguments class. I guess we could do a for each on it too. So let's just do a for each. For each. In arguments. And what we can do is get our out string. And instead of doing this, just copy that and say out string plus equals, I don't know if you can do this or not. Or not. Date is plus equals string. And instead of it being string, we'll just call it str, like that. And then we print out the value of the out string. Get rid of this. Won't need this date string anymore. Save that, and let's come down here and let's run this and see what we got going on here. Nope, I forgot I had that debugger up there. And just continue to get to there. And the value of my out string is Sunday. Date is Sunday, June 13th, 2021. So it gave us the right value. The formatting is a little off, but so let's say instead of putting that, we're gonna put a plus comma space on there, and let's go to run this again. It's gonna be kind of off, but, and then we can trim the end. Trim Is there an overload for that? No. Let's just leave it like that. All right, so I'll take the debugger off. And there we go. Today is Sunday, June, and it's got a comma on there. And we can actually put some conditionals in here and say date is, and just put a space in there instead of the commas, and just say run that. That's much better. So we have date is Sunday, June 13, 2021. Now let's do the same thing over here. Now it'll go much faster over here because, like I said, I'm a C# guy. So, all right. So, what did I do here? So I have value of my int is, take that debugger off. Now I created a string called outstring, but I don't have to do that in C#. I mean, there's different things I can do this a lot more efficiently in C# than I can in Java. And I'm sure there's another way to do this in Java. Like I said, I am not a Java dev. I do know some Java. But what I can do is this. I can do this in Java. I mean in C#. I can say var out string equals string.format. And then I can come over here and I can say date is 0, 1, 2, 3. And then instead of having to bring in this local date time library and do a declaration on that, the system library or the system namespace includes a lot of that already for me. So I can just do this. I can say date time dot now dot day of week, comma, and I can say date time dot now dot month, and it's an integer. So now this is a little different here because I have to find out what the month of the year is. So, and actually, I can just do this. Let's see, date time dot to string, and I can signify what I want the date to be here. String, and I can say by using a custom date time or a standard date time modifier. So what I'm talking about there is in C#, you can format it either a standard way or you can create your own. So in here I can say give me the month of the year in here somewhere. Well, let's go to the standard ones here. So I need month, I need day of the year, day of the week, month of the year. So it's Sunday, June, day of the month, and then year, right? So I can say give me something similar, and it would give me something that will be pretty close, but that's for the standard. The custom ones, oh, those are time. Custom standard datetime format strings. Okay, here we go. So something like this. So all I have to do is just put capital D there. And I'll even have to do that. Let's see what that gives me back. Oh, we have to write it to the console. Okay. F5 that. Now let's see what I get here. And F10. And I should get state is Sunday, June 13, 2021. That is exactly what I want. So if I output that, here's my console right there. Date is Sunday, June 13, 2021. Did it all for me. Now let's see if there's some custom or some standard datetime formats in Java. Standard. Well, we've got a simple date in there. So sometimes it's just a matter of using the right class that you need, right? So I don't know. I've not used that before. Something similar to that. There we go. So yeah, so these are the simple datetime formats for Java here. But you still have to import that library. Um, if I didn't, if I had it over here and I didn't import the Java or the com.txt library or class or package, I should say, then I can't use that over in Java. I mean, it's very similar to C Sharp, but C Sharp, they do a lot of the work for you, and they try to include and get all of those classes in there by default. So it's a lot easier, right? It's less work. Here's another thing. I think I talked earlier about properties, right? So in Java, to create a property, you have to let me stop my code here. In Java, to create a property, what you do, let's Google Java property and string property variable. Okay, so this is an example of a Java property here. So you have a getter and a setter in Java. You have your private int, you have a getter and a setter of that variant of that property. So what I mean by that is if I come up to this class and I say private int name, and I say public int get name or get num get number, and then you have a public void set number. That's your getter and your setter. So this is your getter and this is your setter. And so to get it, what you do is you return number like that. And to set it, you say, and then you have to pass in int p num or something like that. And then you have, what you do is you say number equals p num, something like that. So that's your getter and your setter, right? And it would be this dot number. So then down here in the method, if I want to get the name and set the name, I'd say name dot, oh, I'd say get number. Oh, I gotta put those, since it's public, that's public, public, static, because I'm in a static class here. Okay, there we go. So I want to say get number. I can do it that way. I can say, I'd have to set it first, but I can say var or something like set number to 5. All right. And then I can say var num equals get number, and that will give me the value of 5 back here. Now in C#, it's totally different. Properties are very easily created by just doing this. It has a getter and a setter in there already, and then all you do is when you instantiate your property, you just pass it the right type. So it's an int. So instead of me having to create a setter method and a getter method, I can just say my int, my property, and this is also a static class. So I need to make this static. So I say my property dot get or whatever equals. I can say equals 5, or I can say var get it equals my property. So this is my setter, this is my getter, and over here this is my setter, and this is my getter. But there's a little less work that I have to do over in C# because it dynamically will create a getter and a setter for me. I don't have to do that work. It's one of the beauties of C#. So like they took all of the kind of complex things of Java and they tried to encapsulate them into much easier ways to code. Okay, so other than that, I mean, some syntax differences and stuff. Other things in C# and Java are, again, similar. So for example, a string is a string. My string equals this string. Float. My float equals 0.0. I think I have to put an F in there, don't I? Yeah. Decimal. Now again, there's no, so there's a decimal format, and that's a text, but there's a float in Java, I believe, is a decimal. There's int equals int my int cger equals 0, or there's a big decimal, or big integer, I should say, big integer, some int integer equals 0, and I'm not sure if that's right. Quick fix. Oh yeah. I wonder if that's int 64 integer. I'm not sure how to do that in Java. Again, I'm a little rusty. Um, but in C sharp, if I wanted to make a 64 byte integer, I just say long. My long equals 0. Or if I want to make a float, my float equals 0.0f. See that it's the same as in Java. String, my string equals that. Um, there's a decimal type though in C sharp, and it tells you 0.00m. There's byte, there's bool, you know, there's the types are the same, are very similar in both languages. There's some slight differences on typing. Um, what else? You debug the same way as we've been doing earlier. But like I said, you should be able to, and this is the cool thing about learning. The reason why I want to show you this is because I wanted to show you that if you are partial to one language, like I'm more partial to C sharp, right? Now we've gone through this and you've seen that, my Java experience isn't the best. I do know a little bit, but I know a little bit more than a little bit, but um, the Java code, I can pick up this Java code with just a little bit more study and a little bit more refresher coming from C sharp because the syntaxes are so similar. Picking up one development language will put you in a much better spot to pick up other development languages. The things that I remembered from when I worked on Java took me over to work on the C sharp code, and I just became more partial to C sharp because to me it's again, this is just one man's opinion. It's just easier to learn and easier to use. All of your tools are in one IDE. You don't have to download these tools and that tool and that tool and that tool. If you have a library that you need to get, you can look out on you can look out on NuGet, the NuGet on NuGet and see if it's out there, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio, make it very, very easy for you to code. And the cool thing about Visual Studio, and the cool thing about Visual Studio Code, and Eclipse and NetBeans and all of the editors, all of the IDEs, all of these languages, you can pick them up and you can learn them without spending a dime. As long as you have a computer that can handle a compiler, kind of a heavier IDE, you can pick them all up. You can still do C sharp code in Visual Studio Code as well. You just have to use the command line to compile it and stuff. You can do Python in Visual Studio Code. You can do Java in Visual Studio Code. You can develop web pages and do JavaScript and CSS, all that in Visual Studio Code. You can do the same thing in Visual Studio as well. So I said all that to say this. What you want to do is just pick up one language. Pick up one language. And when you learn that language, it's a lot easier to learn other languages. It's a lot easier to learn other languages. Um, and you'll find that when you start using Java or C Sharp or Python or whatever, you become more partial to it. Um, there are some concepts that are not unique to Java or C Sharp that are object-oriented coding concepts that you'll have to understand, you'll have to know. You'll have to know about encapsulation, you'll have to know about polymorphism, you'll have to know about um, um, inheritance. You have to know about uh, those different things, API, abstraction. You'll have to know about those pillars. You'll have to know about uh, um, inheriting and what interfaces are, modifiers, and you know, the more you know about that, the easier it comes. But you can look at that and carry that over to another programming language. I know when I see public that that's an access modifier in Java. I also know that when I go over to C sharp, public is an access modifier. They have the same function. So again, all that to say this, and we'll close on this. Um, just pick up one true coding language. I say true coding language. Um, there's some debate whether or not HTML is a coding language. It's HTML, hyper markup text language, a hypertext markup language, I should say. The only difference is that HTML, you can write an HTML without communicating to a web server. You can write an HTML page. You could write CSS with JavaScript on an HTML page and make it work for you without communicating to a server. The difference is what makes your web page do the work is that server-side code that you'll want to put in there, whether it be React, Node, Angular, whatever. They all work together. Pick one up, and it makes it easier to learn others. Okay, you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere to get concepts down, to get practice in. So, my advice is, if you want to learn C sharp, download a copy of Visual Studio, or come over here to Visual Studio Code, and you can use it as well. If you want to learn Java, you can use Visual Studio Code to learn Java. I would suggest using Eclipse or NetBeans because they are geared more for Java development. Visual Studio Code is kind of like a Swiss Army knife right now. It does a whole bunch of different things pretty well. There's not just one thing that it does extremely well that sets it apart from everybody else. So again, you can use it that way. If you're going to use Visual Studio, number one, make sure you can run it. Number two, if you can run it, make sure that you've got plenty of space on your computer because you're going to write a lot of code. And you'll find yourself writing bits of code that you may or may not use. So that's those things there. Um, Now the next thing we're going to do before we close up this session here is we're going to open up our Git Bash right here. Let's make sure all of our stuff is saved. Yep. I'm going to close that. And this is saved now. I'm going to close this. Now I'm going to come over to my Git Bash. And I'm going to PWD, navigate to my directory that I need to. So I'm going to say cd space, let's see, PWD. All right, so I need to go to documents, cd documents, PWD. A little small ls dash, and I am in repos, cd repos ls, ls l, and I am in my cd alex l, and I've got a new repository over here that I need to add. Now this Java repository is going to have to be a new repo here. So let's see what we need to do to create a new repo. So let's go to cd space C#. And you see now that I've got this blue over here. That's that's the um, that's the uh, branch that I'm on. And I'm gonna say git status. Let's see what's out here. So here's our code compare folder. So I'm gonna say git add ls-l. So everything in the code compare project is now gonna be it's staged. So let's do a git commit m added code compare for enter. And now we've committed here locally, so let's push it up. Git push. And so now this branch is going to get pushed up here. There we go. Now let's go cd boom. Now we've got this new Java repo that we need to create here, right? So let's go into Java. So let's say cd Java and say git init. And so now we've got this master repo of Java. So the next thing we're going to do is we've got this code compare Java code in here. Let's go ahead and create a let's go ahead and say git status, say git add period, and then git commit m for message, and say added new git repo Java. Enter. Now if I try to do a git push, it's not going to let me because there is no repo with that destination. So what we can do is we can add this repo, but we need a URL. So let's go over to the GitHub here. I think I still have it up. That's not mine. So I'm gonna have to create a new GitHub repository here. All right, so I'm gonna say new, and I'm gonna call it Java. And I'm just gonna put it as Java code for learning. Okay, so create. Now I can just push this up, and it gives us the code here that we need. So I can come over here and I can say git remote add Java, and I'll just use this URL, copy that, and paste that, and say enter, and say git push, and it's figures. Okay, so I can do this stuff here. I've already done a git init. I've already committed it. Copy this, paste that in enter, and then say this right here, copy that, and then do this, copy that, and it should hopefully, there we go. All right, now if I go back over here, I now have code in there. And here's our app.java that we did. All our code right there. And I should come over here and see that I'm on this. Nope. All right, so let's enter and say cd blah blah cd C sharp, and that's the repo we're on right now for our C sharp code. If I come over here, we can hook it up over here as well. I can say, or I can tie to my GitHub here. Git lens, where you at, yo? There we go. And so, we should go up one actually. CD. There we go. And let's say git pull. It says I'm already up to date. And so now if I come back over here, in this code compare, there's our source. Now if I close this and I reopen it, I should be able to see this Java. I should have stuff down here now for my repo. So here's our repo down here. So now if I come over here and I create a new branch, I can call it git branch checkout B, and I'll just call it new Java branch. It switches down there, and then let's go into our Java code again. All right, and let's put some go away. Let's put some other stuff in here. So let's just get rid of this getter and setter here real quick. And we'll come up here and do the same thing. Save that. And if I come down here, I can say git status. And I should see there's changes in there. Yep. And I should say git add period, git commit m removed getter and setter. And then if I just go ahead and say git push, and I'll say git push, yes, git push set string. Git push set. Oh, I gotta respell it the right way. STREM. Enter. Now I should have a new branch up there over on GitHub. So if I refresh this, there's a main and there's a new Java branch. This new Java branch has my getter and my setter removed. And now my main branch, which is my most, my production code, that's got my getter and setter in it. So I came over here and I did a pull request. I can say compare and pull request. And I look down here, I can see this is what I deleted. And I'm able to merge it if I so chose to. So that's using Git. And so now my code is secure. If I make a mistake, I can always roll it back or go to a previous version of the code. So, all right. So this video, hopefully you saw some of the similarities between Java and C Sharp. We did a little bit of code play where we did some similar methods on the output on the main methods for the console and the outputs. I showed you a little bit about how to throw stuff in the Git as well. So yeah, so again, Code Black, go over to Facebook, like that page, like those folks over there. We have a Slack community. Um, this video is going to be on my channel. Again, if you like watching food videos and barbecue and stuff, go to Squiller's Delight. You can check that out as well. And finally, I'm also trying to. I'll be starting on Code Mentor here, hopefully real soon. So, um, yeah. So I'll tell you more about that another time. So, I plan to do these at least once a week, maybe on the weekend. I'll post a new video out there, and if we get more input, um, and more more pointers. Again, I am not the end all be all. I am not the source of all info. So I welcome constructive criticism. Um, so yeah, until next time, hopefully you're blessed and you're healthy and you're happy. And yeah, until next time, peace.